And here we are for what will probably be the last edition of the Duval Dive this season. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game of Jaguar Report. And as always, my man, Travis Holmes of Big Cat Country. I would say good morning to you, champion, but I'm not sure how a therapist greets a patient in this setting. And I feel like this is going to be a lot of therapy and offloading of pain and trial for not just you, but for the Duval devout as the whole after this past weekend. Because goodness gracious, you got a different shirt than I thought you'd have on today. I'll tell you what.
Well, I've gotten it out of my system over the past, few days, past week. Wearing this team makes me drink. It's to the point where I gotta wash it. I gotta do something else. I gotta move on with the off season, if that makes sense, because
Well,
I
listen,
can't be drinking all the time, man.
you sporting the golden arcs is cool, but then I get worried about you staying on your diet. Like that's
Well, no, it's not. No. It's not McDonald's. It's McDowell's. It's okay. It's a little different. It's not the special cheese. It's in a different order, so it's a little healthier for you. That's all.
your buns have no seeds. I get it. That's fewer carbs, but
Right there we go.
hamburgers, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm worried about you, brother.
I appreciate the concern, bro. If I can make it to next season, we'll figure it out.
I don't know. I don't know how healthy for your diet Thousand Island dressing is. It's all I'm asking. I don't know.
I got you, brother.
No, hey man, listen, I had to throw shouts to your golden arcs, not the golden arches, right? The golden arcs and all that. But I'll put it this way, coming to America seemed to have been a problem later in the season for the Jags. More on that later. Let's focus more on the Titans game. And listen, I just got done talking to Mark Moses of 1540 The Fan in Melbourne, who asked me about the Titans game. And I think you and I on the Pro Sports Fans app, bing, in our watch along Duval Dive Live, cited that two things were very different and a big part of it. One, Will Levis not starting helped them because pinpoint passing is something that Tannehill today, as an experienced quarterback, does better than Will Levis. And B, the fight in the Titans O-line compared to the Jags D-line was just completely different from when they got trounced in Duval at Everbank. And of course, Derrick Henry took advantage of that just like a talented running back would, right?
I mean, yeah. And unfortunately, I actually viewed it as Derrick Henry to establish their passing game because Tannehill was problematic, we'll say. He wasn't
Sure.
perfect by no means, but he did the job. And at the end of the day, that's all you need him to do. Get the ball in the right area of Hopkins where he can make a one-handed catch. Just move it along and not screw it up too much, not make these crazy wild plays or these high variance plays that Levis might make as far as turning it over. So yeah, and that way he did the job.
Right, and that's what I'm focused on. I don't mean to imply that Tannehill was the driving force. I mean, this is maybe I should have mentioned the O-line thing first because it was a bigger deal. I'll grant you that, but I'll put it this way: in that game plan, where you're having that line dominate the Jags interior in a way that you and I don't feel like have seen. I don't know, maybe some in the preseason, but certainly throughout 2023, right? That taking advantage of that, I think Tannehill was in better position to do it than Will Levis. I mean, not to beat the dead horse, but yeah, you're absolutely right that that Derrick Henry was the horse that pulled the cart in question.
Right, Derrick Henry and Tajay Sharps, like Spears. Sorry, is just they basically they controlled the game. Like, and I know the time of possession ended up being only a 5-minute difference towards the end of the game, but at the half, it was not like it wasn't close. Like the Tennessee Titans basically controlled the flow of the game as far as that piece was concerned. And well, yeah, and with them actually scoring points and the Jaguars not, that's the difference, if anything. And not to mention fumbling balls into the other team's hands normally doesn't bode well for your chances of taking an early lead. In the Jaguars, we've seen they're not a good team when they can't take the lead, have the lead at halftime. Like they're actually they lost every game in which they played this season. I believe it was 0-9, in which we were down at the half. So we are a team that is not good at playing from behind, unfortunately.
Um, the Jags don't have 9 losses on the year, but they did do bad when they weren't
When
leading half.
0-7, 0-8, it was something along those lines.
Yeah, well, then it would have to have been 0-7 because they finished 9-7, right? So, something
Was it 9-7?
math
Are you sure? 9-8, 9-8,
or nine
nine
and
and
eight. I
eight.
beg your. Now I'm still living in the past too. But the punchline is, yeah, they lost. They were losing at the half too, and I see where you're coming from there as well. No, there's a lot of sense to be made with that point. In particular. By the way, you mentioned the time of possession being closer than towards the end of the game. That's what happens when you turn the ball over, Travis Holmes. Just that being a factor as well. 2 interceptions, of course, by Trevor Lawrence. And listen, the Trevor Lawrence shade is coming out. Of course, Mike Caldwell being fired. Let me ask you about that first. I was kind of saving this one. You had said that move didn't surprise you. It kind of did me. I'll be honest, but tell me your thoughts on that.
So it was going to happen, and I say it was going to happen as far as we all knew changes were going to have to be made.
Right.
The question of the hour was always, what were the changes that were going to have to be made? Was it going to be the offensive line coach who has a history with the head coach, or was it going to be the defensive coordinator or something? Like we all knew it wasn't going to be the offensive coordinator. Basically, we knew it wasn't going to be Press Taylor,
Right.
because he's shown that in the past that he is going to go down swinging, protecting Press. So that's out of the question. Well, what big changes materially can you make? It's going to be the DC or the O-line coach or something along those lines. Well, that's it. It's a 50-50 chance. And I honestly thought it would be the O-line coach and the DC, but I actually had the article already in the draft folder before the season, before Monday came. Like that over at bigcatcountry.com. Like that's how confident I was that it was going to be that. It was just going to be that. And it stinks. And I don't know if it's necessarily even fair, but it is what it is.
Yeah, somebody needed to go. I think the term scapegoat was thrown around a lot. I know the article that I read by Gus Logue over at Big Cat Country, bing, opens with him. The dictionary defines a scapegoat as that, and he's not wrong to take that route. Listen, I get it. Caldwell was sacrificial and all that. I can see defending keeping the O-line coach around over and above the relationship. I mean, you did develop a rookie in Anton Harrison very quickly here, who came out swinging, making a big deal, among the better rookie linemen in the league acquired this year. I don't think. And by the way, what a gauntlet he had to face too. We've made that point many times on this show. The dudes that Harrison has had to face. I think he had a successful season. It's hard to hold injuries against a coach as well. I think that was a big part of it.
Right.
And if I'll put it this way, I don't know when the O-line coach in question arrived. I'm assuming it was with Peterson. But just seeing, I'll put it this way, this offense in the coming year is where that rubber meets the road, because that's when you're going to have an opportunity this draft, theoretically, to buy some more groceries or head to the butcher to get more beef. See what I did there, right? Instead of wasting picks on Tank Bigsby, Brendan Strange. Well, actually, let me get right to that. We could say all we want to about the stuff during the season, Travis, and the position of the coaches, but I think you and others on Twitter have made the point that with the benefit now of Captain Hindsight getting involved, the picks made really sort of, I guess, doomed, air quotes, what was going to happen, because it left them exposed in those particular positions. And of course, I refer to the O-line and the defensive backs.
Right. And I think I can agree with that. And unfortunately, it's one of those situations where, all right, wait. So you know how I feel about Trent Baalke. I think that's pretty much written in permanent marker.
About okay. You need to stop like that's yours, okay? Like,
Well, I needed to make sure that this wasn't. I'm not putting my opinion on you on the off chance your opinion may happen to change at some point or
and
another.
I'm taking that ish off the table.
All right, so you know how I feel about Trent Baalke. However, it
However,
was brought to my attention when I had a conversation with the former Jaguar employee this past week,
sources have told Travis.
and it was interesting. It was just like the gist of the conversation. I mean, it was probably a 45-minute conversation, but we only talked about the Jaguars for maybe a good 10. And the
Hey,
way that
listen,
it was
10 minutes with an expert's a lot, bro.
well, and the way that it was presented to me was you would be shocked how deeply the coaching staff was actually involved in the draft picks. And I'm like, oh, so this person was not necessarily a Trent Baalke fan, but they also weren't a Trent Baalke
They were
we'll
prepared
call it, I don't know.
some of the blame. Yeah, that bulky can't. You can not like someone, but still find ways they're defensible.
Right. And that was a curious little ding, like little antenna go up moment. Like I'm like, okay. And around that time, you would have saw me post of some kind of post on my social media, Travis D. Holmes on Twitter, that some of these picks may not necessarily be all on Trent. It could be because they're a coach-centric organization, in the words of Shad Khan when they hired Urban Meyer. The same thing he said when they hired Doug was they're a coach-centric organization and they're working together. So then you have to start questioning, well, dang, how much of this is on Trent versus how much of this is on actually on Doug, and maybe these are some of his actual picks.
Mhm.
And that changes the ball game because now we want Trent Baalke fired for something that legitimately could be, nah, coach wanted Tank Bixby. Coach wanted Brandon Strange because he's the tight end whisperer and the quarterback whisperer. And now it muddies the water when in these evaluations, even for fans.
Yeah, well, no, and I think that's a fair point you're making. I would even say this: you, I think, explained to me probably on the show here on the Duval Dive that those picks were augmentations of a Doug Peterson offense. So it would
Right.
track that he made those picks. And granted, if he was involved with bringing Anton Harrison in, if we're going to talk trash on the ones he missed, we got to give him credit for his hits. That
Right.
being said, it would certainly appear that he has more misses than hits in the draft so far. Granted, we can't comment on Abdullah yet. He spent so much time getting hurt.
Yeah.
I was very enthused by that. Granted, maybe I have a little bias from covering him and see him do really well against UCF, writing for the Black and Gold Banneret. Bing! But I see Abdullah making an impact.
Right.
How big a one is another question. And what round was he? I think it was a fifth round or something like that.
It was
So,
dang, it was either fourth or fifth.
yeah,
I'm drawing a blank right now.
either way, Abdullah getting a contributing role as a third day guy, as a second day guy is good. I'd like to see it. I think that'll happen, right?
Right.
And not bad for a dude coming out of Louisville. I get it. So with that in mind here, obviously the Jags are not in the playoffs, much to the chagrin of the Duval devout. But let's do a little story time with Uncle Travis on what may have been the cause. I bring you the curse of Captain Duval. Travis.
Never cheat on your main. The Jacksonville Jaguars. We had our NFL Jacksonville Jaguars fan of the year in the commission special, and for whatever reason, we started flirting with this other guy from Britain. The Jacksonville Jaguars were 8-3. The fans, even if they weren't ecstatic, they were raving about the fact that we had a chance at the number one seed in the AFC. And then over from overseas, we bring him back into Duval County, and all of a sudden we were a household divided. Team goes 1-5 to finish out the season, and all of a sudden you guys have made me wear my "this team makes me drink" shirt, and we're all just regretting this emotional investment. It's a sad day, man. We started the
Whoa.
season off as the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and we ended the season off as Carlton, man. Come on.
Hey, listen, first of all, it's not unusual for teams to struggle late in the season with that many injuries. See what I did there? Second, again, with the coming to America reference just being perfect, with seeing the struggles that happened after they got back from England. It's just too perfect. Like, other than the Bills, I struggled to find an air quotes good team. And I suppose you can count the Texans. I'm not here to smite the Texans. That's not what I'm getting at. But the Jags beat 3 playoff teams. And by playoff teams, I mean teams that made the postseason this season, obviously.
Right.
But the Jags beat 3 playoff teams and let others that made the playoffs off the hook. Needing overtime. Granted, one could argue that coaching, Zach Taylor and company play calling a pass by Boyd kept them in the game to bring it to overtime, but they had a shot to beat Jake Browning and the Bengals. They had a shot to beat Patrick Mahomes II in week 2 in Everbank. I'm missing another one they had a shot to win, but that exists. They did not have a to beat the Ravens. So there's that.
Well, that's the fun part about this, because that's just the NFL. Like that's no different than the Vikings last year, when it always comes back to the mean. Like when you end up going like undefeated in 1-score games, and then all of a sudden it flips the next season. Like, that's natural within the NFL just in general. And that happened. That's kind of what happened for the Jaguars this year also, though.
Yeah,
you can't expect to come back after being down 10 points, 15 points, 20 points at the half multiple times in 2022. And then in 2023, you can't buy a victory being down at the half. It's just all of a sudden that magic switch, it didn't go off. And in the words of Christian Kirk said something like that earlier this week.
Yeah, I know. And Kirk, I think Kirk's assessment is awesome, and relying on magic, and it was always the Jags' energy didn't work. I agree with that assessment. I would also maintain the Jags had a bit tougher schedule this year. For example, taking on the AFC North this year, an absolute bear. Okay. We're talking about a team that had Jake Browning at the helm and is 1 game short of 4 10-win teams up in this humpy puppy. Okay. Then you have the Niners on the schedule. Ouch. Okay. Just a lot going on. By the way, Kansas City Chiefs and the Bills on the schedule. Like, those are all pretty rough games. And then, by the way, the Texans get significantly better. The Colts got significantly better. The Titans were the Titans. But,
honestly, you can't say the Titans are the Titans and then we lose against them. That's
actually, that's the most Jacksonville damn thing I think has happened, is the Titans and the Titans, and you're still split with them. That's absolutely a Duval thing. You know I'm right there.
Yeah, you're right.
The only bit of respite they had was playing the NFC South. I'm not here to world beat that, but I feel like the highs were higher and the lows were lower, and then the division on the whole got better. And it was always the Jags wasn't going to work anymore.
I think I can agree with you, because even some of the hard teams that the Jaguars played in 2022, and we talked about this last season, was they may have had injury issues. When they played the Chargers earlier in the year, they had an injured quarterback and one of the receivers down.
Colts at one point had was out. They were down Bosa.
Right. That does change the math just a little bit. You're making a fair point. And some of the harder teams they would have had to play against in 2022, they lost against, whether that be the Chiefs, where they beat the Ravens with the comeback, got demolished by the Lions. Like, so you're not wrong, but it's funny.
The Ravens this year is a better Ravens team, by the way, because they got rid of their obsolete offensive coordinator.
No, you're not wrong there. So the schedule did get harder. I will acknowledge that, but also the schedule got tougher, and those aren't the same thing. When I say the schedule got harder, cool. These are more difficult teams to play.
Think you're absolutely right in your assessment.
More physical teams. Yeah. So again, the Detroit Lions last year show what you can do against being physical against the Jacksonville Jaguars team, and now all of a sudden you have 5, 6 physical teams on the schedule the next year, and all of them, and all the losses look the same.
Yeah.
Domination up front. You just can't run the ball. And wow, yeah, you're not wrong. So yeah, in that way, the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of ran into a buzzsaw because they weren't ready for what was coming for them.
I would make the argument that the Jags, dealing with physical teams, by the way, repelling the Bills. Obviously, the Bills, I think, is the best win of the year. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. I certainly say as much in my article about the top 5 best and worst moments for the Jacksonville Jags in 2023 from the Jaguar report. Bing! But I'll say they also, too, to the Jags' credit, when they were still healthy, when they were still doing damage to teams the way they were leading in turnovers, I think they kept the Bills long term from well, they did eventually win the division, but they didn't dominate it. They needed the Dolphins to choke in week 18, hashtag I said it, in order to get there because of the will imposed by the Jags. However, from that point on, that Cincinnati game, there's your buzzsaw, in my opinion. All the injuries that took place, not everybody came back from it. And just watching the will break from that point on, where you hit more physical teams back to back to back, the Browns, the Ravens. Hell, I mean, by that point, of course, they lost to the dang Bucks. They're on the road, and Baker Mayfield's looking better than he did. I mean, it's all making sense, and perhaps that lends tribute to your Captain Duval point.
Well, no, man, what I'm hearing is that that Zach Taylor just ruined Christmas for press. That's what I'm getting. Zach Taylor basically wrote the book on how to beat the Jaguars, and everybody else from that point on, it was just all downhill. And we talked about that week after that loss. That Zach Taylor saw the Buffalo Bills game, said you guys didn't run the ball enough, and that's why you lost. I'm going to run the air out of these balls, and they did. And no one's and from that moment on, the Jaguars couldn't stop a sneeze.
Yeah,
That was it.
Zach Taylor came into town for Christmas vacation and brought up politics, and Press Taylor just couldn't handle it. I get it.
That's it. Big brother. That's a big brother love, unfortunately.
So upcoming here, I think, will be the completion of Travis Holmes' therapy. In something he labeled the top Jaguar plays of 2023. Warm up your hugs. Travis needs some love here. I'm going to go ahead and show don't tell Travis's top 5 plays rather of 2023. And hey, maybe an excuse for me to throw another bing if you want to check out my moments on Jaguar Report.
Yes.
But yeah, walk me through it here, Travis. Here we go.
So number 5, to start this season off, this is how the Jacksonville Jaguars season basically went in a shell, where we have perfectly thrown balls that result in interceptions off of our rookie running back's hands. But good hustle trying to go on. At least you went and hawked them down and got the tackle. So good job there, Tank. But that's how the season started off for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Week 1, that's a pretty good omen for how the season would end up going. But then the Jaguars found a way to come back to that previously mentioned Buffalo Bills game. Darius Williams with the dog play, just going up and getting it, taking the ball from Diggs. Like, I'm a DB. I love some great DB play, and that's what you want to see, man. But number 3, you have Christian Kirk, that dude, shutting the door on the New Orleans Saints, and with a lot of great blocks going downfield. Like, again, we know we missed that dude so much. We know we missed that dude so much, and then he delivers the package with the Amazon, the Amazon Prime with the Amazon delivery for the celebration. Hey, man, you gotta love that. Uh, number 2, we got to give him some love, and it wasn't about this individual play; it was about his play over the whole season. But this just represents it all. Josh Allen, pay that man. Just back in the Brinks truck. This is his sack that basically gets him the Jacksonville Jaguars record when he ties it with Calais Campbell, and he had to give the man his credit and doing the dance. Mayor of Jacksonville, I love it. Great teamwork, great season for that young man. And number 1, we have to bookend this, right? We got to bring it right back to another. If we start the season off with a tip pass for interception, we got to end the season off with a tip pass for interception. It's only right, baby. So, yeah, Evan Ingram with the tip pass into the defender's hand, perfectly thrown pass, leading to 7 points for the Tennessee Titans in a game that we lost by 8. Oh, and for your honorable mention, we got to take a look at your boy Luke Fortner, because we got to talk about him. We know. Everyone knows that this is probably the weakest spot on the Jacksonville Jaguars roster. So why not? Let's talk about Luke. The plays of the season. I wanted to give him an honorable mention because he ended up, 3 yards behind the quarterback on a quarterback sneak play. But to his defense, this was actually a very bad Trevor Lawrence audible. Just very bad. You can't have a play when the the guard is supposed to be pulling an audible to a quarterback sneak when the center actually has two people attacking him. So he's going to
Yeah.
get dominated no matter what, and he has to go sideways. So as bad as Luke Fortner may have been this season, unfortunately, he was left out to dry on that audible from Trevor because he has to block two guys while running sideways on a goal line play.
I don't know.
And those are
Here's
your
what
top five plays of the Jacksonville Jaguars season.
Here's what I know. You had to bring in all that smack talk, and poor Foye Oluokun completely left hanging out to dry. Don't even mention the pick six, man. Come on, man. Come on, man.
It's top five, and that's including bad and good plays. I'm sorry, I couldn't put it there.
No, it's all right, man. I just from my perspective as a host on this show, I had to throw some year-end love to Foye Oluokun. Now a Pro Bowler, by the way, as an alternate. So yeah, absolutely. I call the Browns the most underappreciated defense in the league, but Foye is certainly the most underappreciated defensive player, in my opinion, in the league. So, I mean, another 100-yard tackle, bro, or 100-game tackle, better. Sorry, yeah, 100 tackle
100 tackle season.
Right, there we go. I'm all over the place. Anyways, speaking of being all over the place, you can find my guy Travis Holmes all over the place. Tell him where, my guy.
You can find my writings covering the Jacksonville Jaguars at bigcatcountry.com. Of course, you can find me here, the Duval Dive, a Jaguars podcast, all throughout the 2024 season. You can find me on Inside the Pigskin, which is by the South Florida Tribune on Tuesdays, wherever you find your podcast. That is at 8:30 p.m. And you can find me on all the socials, Travis D. Holmes. Wonderful season, Duval. Wasn't the season we wanted, but I guess it's the season we deserve based on our GM.
I even though you're trying to, I don't know, based on the draft, we'll say that regardless of who picked it, it was the draft that made it happen. I think we'll agree on that without question. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Instagram and Threads as the same, the SOTG. Check out my writings. Well, actually, also on Facebook as a student of the game. Apparently, just like Gus Malzahn's mom, I got reminded there at a press conference I was at for the Black and Gold Banneret introducing KJ Jefferson. So check that action out as well. Of course, my writings for the Jacksonville Jaguars will be found on the Jaguar Report. Check out my work also with the three-point conversion, especially on their YouTube channel. You'll find some of my NBA offerings there, where I also cover for A7 BN Sports. There we go, all the way around. An honor, joy, and privilege to do it. Listen, had a fun time this season, whether it's here or on the Pro Sports Fans app. Can you do better than me and the champion, Travis Holmes here? I question it, but no disrespect to, of course, my good friend John Shipley, and of course, Travis's guy, Gus Logue, also at bigcatcountry.com and the Jaguar Report. Bing! So, for Travis Holmes, to all of you Duval devout out there, check out our work in the offseason. We'll probably pop in and do a little bit of draft talk here. If I got to give Travis his opportunity to talk about what picks he wants to see, and I know I'm curious to hear it, you should be too. I just said it. That's all. But until next time, my friends, in honor, joy, and privilege, class dismissed.